because I played Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I hope it's not what I think it is. I hope it's not insinuating because I'm old, because I'm an old man that you know that we're too old for games or something like that. Let's see what he has to say though. I might be jumping the gun on that. Like the Night Sky Prince. Let's see what he has to say. The massive Final Fantasy Unk problem. Fuck you though. I'm an Unk. Let's see what we got here. All right, let's get it.
Since Final Fantasy 15, the last game that majorly
I have that game too.
expanded the Final Fantasy brand. It aimed to be a Final Fantasy for fans and first-timers alike, and largely it succeeded, and has sold over 10 million units worldwide.
That's
However,
insane.
a decade later, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Final Fantasy 16 are struggling sales-wise, with Square Enix trying harder than ever.
Wait, is it though? I heard that Final Fantasy 16 did really well, and of course the Final Fantasy 7 like remakes. Like I have Remake and Rebirth Part 1 and 2, and I heard that they did phenomenal. Is it really that bad though?
To expand the audience. They have, on multiple occasions, cited this for their reason for pursuing action combat, as they believe that younger generations simply wouldn't be interested in slower turn-based gameplay. But despite these efforts, it really has not moved the needle. We recently found out via Circana and Matt Piscatella that over 62% of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth players were 35 or older, and 77% are over the age of 30.
That's crazy though. I remember when I first bought Final Fantasy VII Remake, I was still in my late 20s. Rebirth, when it came out a few years later, I was in my early 30s. I'm 35 now, so he's on the money on that one, but that shouldn't matter. I mean, also we also have a lot more disposable income as well. But I honestly, it's kind of sad if that's the case where a lot of these young kids, younger Gen Z and like early Alpha Gen are not interested in these type of games, like slower turn-based style games. Like that's kind of unfortunate. I guess with all this, TikTok bringing stuff like that, they want that fast-paced shit. Oh man, it's not great. Not great at all.
Now, obviously, there is nothing wrong with being over 30, but it does mean they have an aging player base, which to a large corporation presents a massive sustainability problem. So what is actually going on? What is the root cause of the Final Fantasy Unk problem? First, go ahead and make sure your old ass hits that subscribe button. Buddy, I've seen the demographics, and I know what you are. And I know about your lower back pain. Also, be sure to check out the channel sponsor, Infinity Nikki, with a link in the description or pinned comment below. And this all started because Naoki Yoshida argued that mainline titles now take 5 to 6 years to develop, and a child who misses one entry might be an adult by the time the next one arrives. With
Yeah, that shit was crazy. When Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, that was back in 2018, 2019, 2020, around there. Rebirth came out like in 2022, 2023-ish, around there. So it's been a couple of years since then. A lot can change over those years, man. But yeah, I think I remember seeing this dude. He got way old, man. Holy shit! It does take so long to produce one of these magnificent games, man. It's kind of unfortunate too, but I actually do like it because they take their time and effort to do so, man.
I'm saying, quote, I'm 53 now, and I've been playing since
Wow.
Final Fantasy 1 in real time.
Wow.
But for younger generation,
Final Fantasy 1 came out in 1989. Food for thought.
People who grew up naturally accustomed to action-based combat and online competitive play, the recent entries in the series may have been harder to engage with. Part of that is simply because, I'm sorry to say, release intervals for new titles have gotten longer, so some players haven't really had the chance to connect with the series the way older fans did. And this is true. If you're in your mid-30s or early 40s, when you were growing up, there was a Final Fantasy game coming out almost every year. Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, and 10 all released in a span of 1997 to 2001.
Okay, for me, guys, I was born in 91. My first, well, I'll separate it in two parts. My first recognition of what Final Fantasy is and my first long playthrough of Final Fantasy. My first introduction to Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy 7. Back then for the PlayStation 1, I didn't play the whole game. I played the demo disc of Final Fantasy 7. The scene where the reactor is starting, where the reactor is about to blow up and then it just cuts, it cuts out a frame and then it just shows the Final Fantasy 7 logo. That's the only interaction I have with Final Fantasy 7. I never got the game. I never got played the full game. That's just me. But back in 97, I was only 6 years old, so you can't blame me for that. But my first ever long through playthrough for Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy 10. Final Fantasy 10 will always be near and dear to me in my heart, bro. Tidus, or T2 in Japanese, Yuna, Kimari, Auron, Lulu, Waka, Riku. those will always be some of the best characters that they ever made. I even got 10 too for PlayStation for the PlayStation 2 back in 2003 with the sequel of Final Fantasy 10 just because it was Final Fantasy 10. I had to get it. So, yeah, that's my intro to Final Fantasy or just to Square Enix in general. Final Fantasy 7 was my first ever like knowledge of what Square Enix as a company was because I had no idea back then.
Mind-boggling that Squaresoft was able to make so many incredible
Yeah, that's what it was called back then, Squaresoft. Nowadays, they joined with a company called Enix, a Japanese company, and became Square Enix. But back then, I think it was before the mid 2000s ish around there, or the late 2000s around there. It used to be called Squaresoft.
titles back to back to back. But I also think this isn't just a kids growing up thing. I also think that if you're an adult and the latest mainline Final Fantasy game doesn't appeal to you, it's gonna be at least 5 years or more until the next one comes out. The most divisive game of the golden era was Final Fantasy VIII. Even then, this is still an incredibly beloved game. However, if you don't like Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy IX was coming the next year, and Final Fantasy X was coming the year after that. But right now, if you don't like Final Fantasy XVI, that means you're going to be disconnected from the Final Fantasy series for maybe a decade. And in that
I played Final Fantasy 16 a little bit, not as much as I did with Final Fantasy 15 or with 7 Remake. I really hope they start doing this. If Final Fantasy 7, like the entire trilogy, becomes really successful, I hope they start remaking some of the older stuff, like not just 8 and 9. I mean, don't look at 10. 10 and onwards, don't look at them. Like 8 and 9, I hope they make a remake for that because I played 8 when I was at my friend's house a long time ago, and I played 9 a little bit. But I'm talking about the older titles like 6 and before. I really would like to see a remake on those titles. Introduce those type of games to the newer, younger audience, and as well as me, because I don't know anything about the older Final Fantasy title except maybe because of Dissidia. That's the only reason I know about like the heroes or the heroines and the villains. So yeah, and remember, Final Fantasy once started at 1988 or 89. So yeah, it's been a while.
time, you'll just think, maybe Final Fantasy isn't for me anymore. And because this series is constantly doing things that are going to alienate its existing fanbase, it can only make the level of attrition grow higher and higher. Square Enix has been trying to get younger audiences into their games by leveraging action combat. This is the explicit reason for why Final Fantasy XVI and Final Fantasy VII Re-Trilogy are action-oriented. But of course, outside of Final Fantasy XV, this simply has not proven to be the case. Every subsequent Final Fantasy action game has, at best, performed as well as the Final Fantasy turn-based games, that being mainly Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1, or has
This is Rebirth Part 2, by the way.
done substantially worse, such as the case with Final Fantasy XVI. All the meanwhile causing significant attrition among their older fanbase, while also failing to attract any new players. I want to be clear here that I'm not anti-action per se. I would go as far as saying that Final Fantasy VII Re-Trilogy's combat is maybe my favorite combat system of all time in any RPG. But if we're being objective here, it has not been a delta in the slightest. In fact, it's definitely made these games cost more to produce and take way longer to make, with Square Enix having to hire external talent in order to make these.
So they're trying to create a balance between some of the older audience and the newer generation. I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to create like a balancing act. They're trying to appeal to like my generation, us old heads, and the younger generation, like younger Gen Z and Gen Alpha, to like some of these turn-based type of game. It's really hard. It's really tricky because the younger generations, they some of them, a lot of them are not into this type of gameplay or game style. They're more into this turn. They're not into the turn-based type of gameplay. They're like more fast-paced type of games. And I don't blame them for that. They have their work cut out for Square Enix. They really do.
games, as they didn't have the competent action staff themselves. For example, from a Polygon article on the matter, quote, Yoshida and Takai, producer and director, said that they developed early action-focused take on Final Fantasy over the course of 2 years, building a prototype where players would fight 2 boss-type characters. The prototype also included a spectacular early version of an icon clash, a showy summon versus summon battle that looks like an early 3D fighting game. We submitted that to the board of directors and they approved our project. But then there was a problem. Now that we have this one, we have to create a bunch more of these icon versus icon battles and also have to create client versus enemy battles. It can't just be hard-coded. We need to have a system that's going to work for all of the game. Looking at the existing staff on hand, Takai said, they realized they didn't have anyone with great action expertise. In order to make the battle system of the game, as well as the icon fights, they had to enlist staff from Platinum Games, as well as the Kingdom Hearts team.
Dude, I'm gonna say it, bro, and I'm gonna piss off a lot of Kingdom Hearts fans. I don't really give a fuck. As someone who played Kingdom Hearts since the first one that came out in 2002, Kingdom Hearts 3 was such a disappointment. You know, it was terrible. I didn't like it at all. If I had to rate all the Kingdom Hearts games, the main one, the trilogies, 1, 2, and 3, I would give Kingdom Hearts 1 a 9, Kingdom Hearts 2 a 9.5, and Kingdom Hearts 3 like a 6.5, maybe a 7 if, with the DLC that they released a few months or like a year later. That cost $40, by the way, because they forgot to add some of the Square Enix characters and the extra battle scenes on there. So yeah, not not the best Kingdom Hearts 3. Not the best. Kingdom Hearts 3 was not the best at all, and it kind of was a failure.
Similarly, with Final Fantasy VII Remake, they had to hire Teruki Endo, best known for his work on the Monster Hunter series, in order for them to have competent action. I want to be clear that I'm not trying to make the argument on whether these systems are good or bad, but from a purely business perspective, they are going through great lengths to do this, and it thus far has not resulted in what they were intending. The average Final Fantasy fan in Japan is 42, and according to Circana, 62% of Final Fantasy fans are 35 or older, and 77% are over the age of 30. But it's important to realize that Final Fantasy is not the only series in this situation. Resident Evil also sits at 60% over the age of 35, according to Circana, putting it at roughly the same place as Final Fantasy. Interestingly enough, 13 years ago, back in 2013, Capcom was worried about the aging Resident Evil fan, with the average player being in their 30s and
Darn, bro. The average Resident Evil player is 40, and Capcom doesn't like old guys. That's kind of disheartening. This was back in 2013. I was 22, so I wasn't even old back then. I was only 22 years old.
40s. And yeah,
But fuck that guy, whoever made this. Jason Johnson, whoever made this shit.
almost a decade and a half later, this is still true. This tells me that the average only seems to be a problem if it keeps sliding back. For example, if the average Resident Evil player is 50 the next decade, then that will probably be an issue. But if the average player remains at 40, then I don't think this will be a big problem. And we can definitely observe this from recent Resident Evil game sales. Resident Evil is selling more and faster than ever, Requiem being the fastest selling game in the entire RE series.
I had Requiem, bro, right before I sold it because I needed some cash to buy it. I played the whole game in its entirety, and it's a delight to play, bro. Seeing how much progression Leon came from 2 all the way to now to 9, his aging, his action, the combat style, the story, it's so good. And a lot of people kept shitting on single player games. No, this game was great, and I recommend people play Resident Evil 9 Requiem, bro. I really recommend it.
Resident Evil 2 Remake selling 16.8 million copies.
Wow.
That's more than 3 times the original game at 5.
I wish Resident Evil 3 was as good as RE2 Remake. I really wish it was. They cut so much shit out of that game, bro. That could have been such a good game. They cut out, like, one of the scenes that they cut out was the clock tower scene from the original game. I don't know why they did that. They kind of rushed the game for some odd reason. But still a decent game, as long as the price is right.
Million copies. As you can see, having an average player base of around 40 has not stopped Resident Evil from growing. So even though the actual percentage is about the same for Resident Evil as it is for Final Fantasy, Resident Evil is also attracting a larger number of people just in general, which is actually equating to millions of more people in their 20s being interested in it over Final Fantasy. But that said, even family-friendly games like Mario and Pokemon, their average player base is still in their 30s. And of course it makes sense because these video games are not free. The average
Dude, what the fuck are these? What are these young kids playing then? What exactly are they playing? Are they only sticking with online games like Fortnite or Valorant, Overwatch, Marvel Rivals? Is that all they're playing? Any of you young dudes, let me know. Let me know if that's the case, that some of you young guys are not interested in these games. What are you playing then? Let me know, what are you playing?
person with enough disposable income and free time to game seriously is pretty much always going to be in their mid-30s.
Yep.
Life throughout your late teens and 20s is a whirlwind of things.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned before. Previously in the initial part of this video, we have more disposable income. Like me, I have 2 jobs. I have enough money to buy whatever the fuck I want, any game that I want, online or single player. Most of these young kids, late teens, they don't have any money. Early 20s, they're in college. They definitely don't have any money. So I guess most of these companies will appeal to us old heads more than these young dudes because we have money.
Finishing high school, then going to college, then getting a job. Then a lot of people will get married and have kids. And so realistically, a lot of people can only start investing in gaming the way they want to around probably their mid-30s. That's just my estimation of things, but tell me if that timeline makes sense.
I would say more mid-ish, late 20s.
most sense for you in the comments below. In either case, there's just a fundamental difference between Gen Z's gaming preferences and millennials' gaming preferences. They are, by the numbers, way less interested in traditional single-player console games. Gen Z is also overwhelmingly mobile first. According to SQ Magazine, Gen Z gamers play on
That's insane. That's honestly insane. Almost 70% of Gen Z likes mobile games as opposed to PC and console. That's nuts, man. Like, don't get me wrong, I have a few mobile games, but I rarely ever touch them. Like maybe once in a blue moon. Like I think some of them. Let me see what a defunct game I have is Sword Hunter, Johnny Trigger, Black Desert, Hunter Assassin, King Throne, Epic 7, Z Escape, Water Sword, Swordmaster S, Crowd Defense, Rise of the Kingdom. I have shit like that. Sword Dash. So, I have a few mobile games, but I don't play them religiously like I do like in PC or console. So, yeah.
mobile at 69%, PCs at 42%, and consoles at 38%. The most popular games for them are games like Fortnite, Roblox, and Minecraft, all multiplayer,
Online
and all can
multiplayers.
be played on
Yeah.
devices like an iPad, which they're significantly more likely to own than a gaming console. And you have to think about this from a parent's POV. If you're going to spend the money and you get your kid an iPad or a phone, then they can play whatever games they want to play on it. And because of social conditioning, everyone has to have a phone, right? Or some sort of mobile device like an iPad. And
Yep.
this is why they end up developing a preference for playing games on mobile. It's also really hard for Square Enix to compete with something like the Hoyoverse games. These games have AAA quality animations and presentation, and they are frequently getting updates and new
What is this, Persona? This is how much I'm out of the loop. I have no idea what this game is. It looks like Persona, but it's really not. Let me know, what is this game? What is this?
content. When I was a kid, I had to beg mom for a brand new video game. This isn't
Mine too. Me too. Me too.
something that younger people have to do nowadays. They just go to the App Store, find something free, and then play that. I think that it's these things that are actually making Final Fantasy and other series lose ground, and not Square Enix's estimation that it's something like the style of combat, or something like a very popular
Basically, free with high quality graphics will always beat high quality graphics, but paid games. Unfortunate.
Gen Z game, Honkai Star Rail, disproves this immediately.
Oh.
But ultimately, while more of Gen Z does tend to play service games, it's not like they don't play console single-player games at all. There's still plenty that love Elden Ring, Resident Evil, and all these other games. I think that the way that you grow this franchise is the way that Capcom has managed to grow Resident Evil. You have a very consistent release pipeline that you know what's coming next. For example, we know that the next Resident Evil game after Requiem is going to be a remake. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We know that.
I hope it's Code Veronica. I know it. They were talking about it a bit. It's either gonna be Zero or Code Veronica. I hope Code Veronica's first. Please, please, Code Veronica, make it first, because I played that game like a motherfucker when I was like in my early teens, and it scared the shit out of me. But I still played it, with Claire Redfield, this girl right here, with her.
Resident Evil game after Requiem.
So I can't
is
wait
going
to
be
see
a
this.
remake.
I can't
There's
wait.
no ifs, ands, or buts. We know that. We know what to expect from the pipeline. And we have a good idea of when this will potentially release. We know we're not going to be waiting forever for the next title. Secondly, you have to first generate excitement among the core fanbase. The core fanbase is your greatest asset. They are not an enemy. Unfortunately, it's felt like Square sees their core fanbase as something to overcome rather than the greatest asset that they have. When your core fanbase is overwhelmingly satisfied, they will preach the good word about your game from the mountaintops. They will scream at everyone to play it. When you ask
Dude, oh, Final Fantasy X, bro. T Dusty. Okay, dude. This is why would they name him that? T Dusty. Come on. But anyway, Final Fantasy X, first ever Final Fantasy game, most beloved Final Fantasy game I've ever played. This is a 10 out of 10 chef's kiss, bro. Oh man. Oh, I was only 10 years old when this game first came out, man. This really pulls on the heartstrings of this old man.
most people nowadays what the best starting point for Final Fantasy is, they usually say Final Fantasy X, in
Yeah.
part because that's the last time that a majority of fans were on the same page. Instead, what we have right now, let's say with Final Fantasy 16 or Rebirth, half of fans will say 16 is the best game ever, you fight Bahamut in space.
Shut the fuck up, who's ever doing that. Shut your little young ass up. Go back and play some of the old school title. Don't ever say some stupid shit like that again. I don't want to hear that.
It goes above and
I would straight up tell a young kid that shit if he ever says that stupid shit to my face.
beyond my expectations, and then the other half is saying that this has betrayed Final Fantasy, it is nothing like the game that I wanted, and ultimately you have yet another game with mixed reception. With
Hey man, you gotta evolve, man. I played Final, like I mentioned, I played Final Fantasy 16, but it wasn't that bad of a game. You know, it wasn't as it was similar to 15, which I liked 15. You know, I bought the special edition as well, and it wasn't a bad game. Sometimes you have to adapt to the new market that's coming up. It can't everything cannot be catered towards just one specific demographic. Like I mentioned, they're trying to do a little balancing act when it comes to the old heads like me and some of the young dudes. It's not easy, but people got to get over it, and you just got to learn to you know see what the new stuff is all about.
7 retrilogy, while people really do love the combat, the moment it comes to talking about the story changes, everything immediately becomes contentious. And while some people will say
No, God, these guys are fucking. I hate these Puritans. Like these people are like, no, there has to be this way. It has to be like the original, or else it's complete trash. Fuck, shut the fuck up, dude.
Final Fantasy has always been contentious, that is true, but nowhere near to the degree that it is now. And I'm sure that part of that is just social media amplifying the discourse as it does with literally everything. But I think it's a different problem altogether when it begins to show up in the series' growth and sales. I understand that there's a lot of money and stakes riding on these games, but you can't just keep asking yourself, what's gonna make us hit 10 million sales? What's gonna make us grow the franchise with Zoomers? Instead, you need to ask, what is going to make for the best Final Fantasy game possible? And not what game can Final Fantasy be like in order to appeal to kids. Be unapologetically different, embrace the spirit that's gotten you this far, and I promise you'll go a lot further than you have. But these are just my thoughts on the situation. And if you're curious about the development history of Final Fantasy games, be sure to check out my latest video, The Truth Behind Final Fantasy XV's Broken Development, a 50-minute documentary on what happened to Final Fantasy XV that led to the game being so incomplete.
All right, good fucking video by the Nice Guy Prince, bro. I mean, it's really hard. It's really hard to appeal to the older generations who basically grew up with these games, and the newer generation, that bring in some of the new guys in here. It's really hard, and I really hope they don't do it because of the money. I really hope they're not like, yo, we gotta get 10 million, sales so we can get this money and da da da. I hope they don't think that way. And I don't think that they will. I think they're gonna find a way to balance it out. You know.